let's talk about this. So if you thought lockdowns and forced vaccinations were bad, well, this is outright evil what they're doing in Canada, in my opinion, and 11 other Western countries, by the way. It's not just Canada. The eugenics program to reduce world population is still alive and well in these countries. And now they're even rolling out assisted suicide television advertisements. So is life too hard for you? Got high credit card debt? Maybe you can't pay your car bills right now, your student loan bills or your car loan bills. Well, no problem. We've got a solution for you. This is a real advertisement for a retail company in Canada. Watch.
Last breaths are sacred. When I imagine my final days, I see bubbles. I see the ocean. I see music. Even now, as I seek help to end my life, there is still so much beauty. You just have to be brave enough to see it.
Yeah, so she's no longer with us. All is beauty.
Wow, they're making it trendy.
Yeah, very trendy. That's his part. They're spending money on advertising to say to you, hey, if you're depressed, you're anxious.
You can tap out.
You can tap out now. Tap out.
We support this.
This will help the global population problem that we think we have. Right? This is part of the plan. So since 2016, I mean, it's absolutely evil. It gives me chills thinking about this. This is what we're facing right now. It's incredibly disturbing. Since 2016, Canada's medical assistance in dying, that's what it's called, medical assistance in dying, or MAID, M-A-I-D, their laws have allowed severely or terminally ill and disabled people to choose to die by either euthanasia, legal drugs administered by a physician, or physician-assisted suicide, which typically entails a provider that is prescribing lethal drugs and then a patient takes them independently. So listen to these numbers. More than 10,000 Canadians died this way last year, up 32% from 2020, and accounting for 3.3% of all deaths in Canada.
That's a staggering number.
Yeah.
3.3% of all deaths.
Yeah. And if you think about it, it's already the most lax in the world. Canada is already the most lax in the world. The measures are set to grow even more permissive. Starting next March, the country will allow people suffering solely from mental illness to seek euthanasia. As we've been reporting here on the show. Of course, we've been covering this Mental Illness Act, part of it, which is going to roll out in March of 2023. So this dispatch from dispatch.com, here's an interesting take. They published this piece this morning, and I want to read it to you, so don't worry about trying to follow along here. But I'm going to read this to you. Opponents of the laws argue they diminish the lives of people with disabilities and can create pressure on people to kill themselves. Persons with disabilities may decide to end their lives because of broader social factors such as loneliness, social isolation, and lack of access to quality social services. United Nations officials wrote in a letter to Canadian leaders last year warning the country's expanding MAID laws could violate the UN's Human Rights Declaration. A social assumption might follow or be subtly reinforced that it's better to be dead than to live with a disability.
You think?
Yeah, and that's already happening. So here's a few examples from this dispatch piece. Such concerns are not hypothetical. Roger Foley, hospitalized with a degenerative brain disorder in Ontario, recorded a conversation with a hospital director of ethics earlier this year in which his ethicist reminded him in a stay at the hospital that it would cost north of $1,500 a day.
That's like a dog. Literally, do you want to pay the cost of caring for this dog or put them down?
Yeah.
You have these conversations with a vet.
But humans are not dogs, right? So according to Foley, hospital staff raised the idea of assisted dying, unprompted. The hospital administrator, the director, just brought it up. It's like, hey, I know this is going to be expensive. Here's an idea.
Or you could not.
Or you could just die. We got ways to that. We've got ways.
That's crazy.
Canadian Sheila Elson, whose adult daughter, Candace Lewis, has several medical conditions, including cerebral palsy, said in 2016, a doctor brought up assisted suicide for Lewis in front of the young girl and told Elson that she was being selfish when she rejected the idea. You're being selfish to not let your daughter die, and we can take care of her right now. All we need to do is just fill out some paperwork and go down the hallway. We can get this taken care of for you. That, you know, that your daughter that has cerebral palsy, we can take care of that for you.
There was an episode of Scrubs where they made fun of this. Like, what if we did this like animals? You know?
Yeah.
Like how you would put down a horse with a shotgun, right?
Yeah.
And in the sort of scene, JD, the doctor, he's like, I don't like the looks of that leg, Mr. Johnson. Right? Like,
Right.
It's as if it's so ridiculous that we should only talk about
comedy.
this in parody.
Right. This is like a Monty Python sketch or a Scrubs sketch, right? Like
Yeah.
this is, but no, this is real. This is Canada. And it's happening in other countries as well. Like I said, 11, Switzerland expanding, Belgium expanding. Well, we've been covering the new eugenics program on this show for a while. Many people wrongly believe that the government-assisted eugenics ended after World War II. It didn't. It is alive and well with just a bit of rebranding in 2022. So it's still here. As we've talked about on this show, this all has its roots in Malthusian policies. So this is Thomas Malthus. He was an English cleric who believed in population control, the idea that the world can't handle so many people. It gave rise to the eugenics programs in the early part of the last century. They were able to say, hey, we've got, you know, what he's saying is really troubling because we're going to run out of food. We've got to start putting people down. We've got to start making sure that people can't breed again.
And also they wanted to selectively breed out undesirable traits in humans such as
Crime, criminals, theft.
Yes, yeah. People who
Poverty.
scored low on tests, people who had disabilities, people
And they actually thought that they could breed out poverty, as if somehow poverty is like a part of your genetic DNA, right? That you could breed out people who just can't make money.
Actually, though, the wealthiest American families were poor within 3 to 5 generations. For instance, the Vanderbilts, who today would be wealthier than Bill Gates by some estimates, within 3 generations, that generational wealth was gone.
Because the kids, they didn't understand how.
So the idea that you could continue to breed wealth has been disproven. So I don't know how you could then use it to think that you could breed out poverty.
So the American eugenics movement embraced negative eugenics with the goal to eliminate undesirable genetic traits in the human race through selective breeding. Basically, the United States would push you off into camps where you would be sanitized and sterilized, right? So you couldn't breed, and they would kill you off. Never to breed again, never to be a part of the problem again.
What's interesting about this is that these are things that breeders do with animals, right? They only breed the strongest for certain things and certain traits. That's been understood. But humans are the only species which takes extra care of innately, we take extra care of our weakest. It's just something in us. If somebody needs help, that's what makes us human. Whereas most species will sort of like push out of the nest, the one that's least viable. We don't do that. So this is what makes us human. So if we start to accept this, then we are fundamentally becoming less human.
And this is exactly.
Well, also, we aren't the same as animals to where like it takes many more generations for us to change than it does an animal. I think it's 10 generations you can have something completely different in an animal, but like what is that for humans?
I don't know. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
I've often wondered why.
But this is transhumanism. I mean, this is exactly what transhumanism is.
Yeah.
Instead of it being eugenics, right, the name eugenics, it's now transhumanism. And so this is exactly what Whitney Webb, I sat down with her and talked about this, and she says this is happening, and now it's just been rebranded, and it's transhumanism, right? It's making us less human. Watch.
Talking about transhumanism, right, that's how you can really see what the eugenics program became. So after World War II, you have Julian Huxley, who's Aldous Huxley's brother. He's installed as the president of UNESCO, but he's also the president of the British Eugenics Society. And charting out his vision for UNESCO, he writes about eugenics, we need to make the unthinkable thinkable again. 10 years later, he describes how to do that in a book called New Bottles for New Wine. Which is basically him talking about the human race in that metaphor. And he creates the term transhumanism, Julian Huxley.
Wow.
And he says that this is the new eugenics, merging man with machine and using these technologies to manipulate genes and all of that. So, it's definitely evolved.
Yeah, so it never went away. It evolved. Now, under the MAID laws in Canada, this is unbelievable part of the story. Canada's Pediatric Society says it's okay to basically eliminate children, as long as they show signs that they are mature.
What does that even mean?
Let me repeat that. Canada's Pediatric Society, under these MAID laws, basically says, hey, if the child is mature enough, like they're not an adult yet, not 18, but if they're showing signs of maturity, then they can. We're going to refer to them as mature minors, and they can make the determination to kill to be assisted suicide and taken care of.
Basically, if they can decide their own gender, they can.
No, but this is the same. Yeah, you make a good point. This is the same thing, is that children should be able to change their bodies, make these decisions, make adult decisions as minors.
Oh, you're 12 and you're depressed? Well, here you go. We don't even need to check with the parents. You're a mature minor. You're 12. You seem like you're mature. Do you want a doctor's note to go and take care of that thing called life? Like that's what we're talking about here.
We have the red and blue pill. We have the hormone blocker or the life taker. Which one do you want, red or blue?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because continuing to live how you are right now is not an option.
Unbelievable. Mature minors. It's an oxymoron, right?
Well, at least, crazy.
I mean, I wasn't mature until I was in my 30s.
Well, you're not, in fact, because the process of mylation does not end until you're 30. So mylation is the process by which your brain sort of gets covered in what's like a phone wire, like this wire, think of it like a plastic. It sort of matures the brain. It starts at, right at the base of your neck and then moves forward to the prefrontal cortex. And that does not end until 30. And so how are you, that's why, like, a lot of us feel like you never had a conscious thought until you were 30. Yeah. I feel like that a lot of times. You didn't. You were like still maturing your brain. So how can you allow someone to make a decision that changes their entire future before this process is complete?
So,
well, the thing is,
I was even thinking, like, why do we even let people get married before they're 30 if that's the case? Right. Like, these are things that I'm worried about, not like, shall I remove parts of my body?
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, this is happening in Canada. I don't think the pharmaceutical industry would let it happen here because they'd be losing too many potential residual clients.
Depends, because our medical system works so much differently that, like, think of what an insurer would pay for this. For instance, like, why does an insurer want to pay for you to get your tubes tied, or a hysterectomy, or a what did you have, honey? The snip.
I had
vasectomy. Thank you.
Oh, reduction surgery.
No. Well, why would they want to do that? Right? Because it will. Like, the future costs will be mitigated, right? So they can charge a lot for that procedure, knowing they don't have to continue to pay for things that are expensive, like another baby or hormones or what have you. So in the United States, you could see that they could charge a lot for this. The insurance companies would absolutely pay it. And then, like, oh, good, that's a profit on that individual. Right now, I don't have to pay for expensive care. Right. In the future, I can make a profit on this.
So they're focusing on the people with pain.
Maybe the pharmaceutical companies will come up with a way to make you so that you're not all the way gone, but you have to take a pill monthly to stay gone. Otherwise, if you stop,
like those, we did a story recently about people who were in these freezers. Right?
Yeah,
like, who knows?
Yeah. So they're focusing on the So they're focusing on the people with pain, but that's just a tiny part of the story. Canada is now focusing on assisted suicide for the mentally ill, so it's not just about the pain anymore. Like, they're moving that narrative away from that, right? You can't pay your bills, you're depressed. Okay, we got a plan for you. If you're depressed, you have anxiety, you can take your own life. It's spreading to now most of other Western countries, Switzerland, Australia. I hate lumping in Australia. It's not a Western country. It's what, a southern hemisphere.
Ideologically, it is.
Ideologically, I say it. So I don't want to hear from Australians saying, we're not Western, but I get it. You know what I mean? Anyway, 11 countries right now. A 23-year-old in Belgium who was otherwise totally healthy suffered from depression, and she was involved in some sort of a terrorist attack that unfolded, and so it left her with, like post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
And she just wasn't not able to fully live her life. And so the Belgian health authorities just helped her end her own life. There you go. You're 23 years old. There's no help for you. So here's a script. Go down and see Dr. Death.
What does that tell other people about resilience too?
It's awful.
You're not going to be able to get over this. And when you read, for instance, the book Dope Sick about why the opioid crisis has come to America, it's largely because Americans are not taught to deal with any amount of pain because, the doctors don't want to hear from them, basically. It's like, this is a painful process you're going through. You're going to get through it. Doctors basically don't want to hear it. So here's something for you, right? What is this teaching us about resilience and the ability to survive as humans? And what would it teach the next generation? It's really troubling. And from a spiritual perspective, my belief is that you come here with something to learn. Right. As a soul, and it's and what your main challenge is going to be, and you are just here to overcome. This is my spiritual belief. I'm not reporting the news now, but if you're facing something and you sort of tap out, my belief is that you'll face this again in another life, and you're not leveling up as a soul, and it makes me sad. Again, that's my spiritual belief. I don't want to impose that on anybody, but that's my reaction to it.
I think people put too much focus on always being happy. There was I think it was Kids in the Hall did a movie about this happy pill or something. You took it to constantly be happy.
Brain candy.
And so there's this thought brain candy. There's this thought in society that if you're ever depressed or ever sad, that's a bad thing. We have to figure out ways to not let you go there and stay happy all the time. And so it's just this pressure that if people aren't happy, they think there's something wrong with them.
Right.
But we have emotions for a reason.
Didn't Buddha say life is about suffering? Right, but we're here. I think that's what he said, right? Buddha said a thing, and so your whole journey is to be resilient, right? It's to overcome. It's to push through dark times. It's to grow, and that's what we talk about in this show. You only grow through discomfort. I try to teach that to my kids all the time. You have to fall down on the ski slope, right, to learn how to ski. You have to get the bloody knee on the playground to learn. Put one foot in front of the other. When you start a business, if you fail, that's how you become more resilient to build a stronger business. So we have to come through these things together, and to be able to just tap out because you've got depression. You're I'm done. Here you go, Canada. Here's your script. Go down and see Dr. Death down the street. He'll take care of it for you.
Yeah. And another question is, why does this look so peaceful and nice? Yet in the United States, when someone's sentenced to the death penalty, we bungle that. We can't figure out how to let those people die nicely. The drugs are all wrong. We have these stories out of Oklahoma where people are writhing in pain because they don't have, how come they get the crappier pills and then these people have nice pills?
I wouldn't put it past them. So the United States pharmaceutical complex is going to be figuring out a way to make this as peaceful. You're going to start seeing television commercials in the United States. Mark my words. That was a television commercial we showed you in Canada. You're going to be watching the NFL on a Sunday. You're going to be kicking back with your buddies, and there's going to be an ad that comes on after your Budweiser commercial. And it's going to be have you been depressed? See a doctor about taking your own life. We'll take care of it for you.
When they'll be hey, not only can we help you, but our new drug will help you die COVID-free.
Yeah. Well, there was a story in Switzerland about how there was a company that did something just like this with a pod, but you had to be vaccinated in order to use it. They would not take unvaccinated people.
In the death pod.
In the death pod. Yeah, that's not a joke either. So,
can you imagine going into the death pod and finding out, wait a second, has anyone else used this before me? Because I'm you're kind of creeped out. That would be the thing. Wait, I'm going to end my life, but I'm creeped out that there was somebody else who ended his or her life before me in this pod. That would be
mud treatment?
I can't do it. I can't. I can't do that. I can't.
I don't want to catch COVID in the last few seconds.
It's creepy. It's interesting.